memorable characters. Now we have to tell the story. So storytelling, and I know this probably could have been the first point, but if you don't have characters and you don't have a story to tell, or we're back to the National Geographic video of New Zealand. It's just scenery. Now you have characters, now you have to tell their story. And I believe, was this my point to start?
Yes,
And I don't normally do this for my panels, but I have an outline.
Wow.
Well, it's a storytelling panel on writing, so I thought I should have a visual aid and have paper. I wrote words on it and everything, with no pictures. I know, right? The first thing you need to understand about storytelling, when you're going to tell a story and you have an idea, you share it with your friend, your mom, your dad, whoever will listen to you. That stranger waiting for the bus, that when they get on the bus sits as far away from you as possible because now you're the creepy kid. When you have a story, don't worry about having an original story. And I'm not trying to be mean here, but there are, depending on which literary professor or mythology class you take, they're going to tell you that there are only either 9 or 16 storylines in the human experience. 16! And we've been telling stories for at least 5,000 years. You're not going to come up with an original story. There are only so many ways to put the puzzle together. Take your time and find a story worth telling. It's not the uniqueness of the story, it's how you tell it. And if you're wondering what I mean by that, there are 3 people standing or sitting up here who are all storytellers. I'll bet you could give us a story to tell, and she would tell it in a completely different fashion than she does. And both of them, hopefully, unless they're in need of intensive therapy, are going to tell that story differently than I do. Because mine will involve explosions and nudity and all the things that make for a good Cinemax movie. So find a story that's worth telling. That's more important than an original story. Okay? But make it your story. Okay, the second part of this is figure out your story before you start writing it. Okay, I grew up reading Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes and mystery novels, Ellery Queen, Harry Mason, all of that kind of stuff. And one of the things that bothered me the most when I got to college and started taking creative writing courses was talking to other aspiring writers who were 400 pages into their mystery novel, and they didn't know who did it yet. And they wanted it to be a surprise to them too. Raise your hand if you've ever seen a movie where it seemed like the ending was just kind of made up all of a sudden, just kind of, oh, here, we need to get out of this. And when you watch it again, there are no real cues and clues along the way that could possibly lead you to the right conclusion. I love a story where I can't guess who did it until I'm done, and then I go back and read it again or watch the movie again, and it all makes sense. And the mark of a really well-told story is somebody that can leave those clues in obvious places that a 4-year-old could have figured out, but you were so caught up in the story, you missed it. Because I'm just enjoying this part. Puny God, bam, bam. And you forget everything else because Hulk just took Loki and just beat him like a man. Okay? You want that in your story. In order to do that, though, you have to find a way to tell the story convincingly, and you have to know where the story's going. You have to have freedom while you're writing, because when you create those memorable characters, they take on their own life. And you'll be writing, and something you thought you were going to do doesn't happen anymore, because that's not how their character would do that. And you want your characters to be consistent, so all of a sudden now you're dealing with a plot change. And that upsets me because it means I'm not very smart. It takes me days to go, that's not going to happen. I can't do that now. What do I do now? Now I'm going for a ride on my motorcycle because that's where I do my best thinking. Some people think in the shower. So I just sing in the shower very poorly, and it's distracting because the neighbors pound the walls and scream and threaten me. And so I go for a motorcycle ride. But know where you're going with your story. You're the guide to this story. You're not along for the ride. You're the guide, and your job is to lead the people that are reading it or watching it from one point to the next. You want to leave that breadcrumb there, but while you're leaving that crumb for next time, you're going, ooh, look, shiny. And hopefully your audience is going, what, where? And missing the crumb until the end when they go, that was clear back there. I knew that. And one of the worst hatchet jobs an aspiring author can do is not know where they're going with their story, and then when they figure it out, they'll go back, because we have computers now, not just typewriters, and it's easy to adjust things. And so they'll go back and they'll plant something at the very second chapter. And I'm not bashing, because I've done that too. But you have to work twice as hard to make that seamless and part of the story, and not, okay, so they were at this picnic and they had all these things set up. Oh, and Godzilla was standing in the background. And then back to it. Because it's kind of an obvious. It's Godzilla. Okay, so you need to know where your story's going before you start writing it. At least have a general outline. I'm big on outlines. They're like game plans for sports. Because as soon as the game starts, you have to make adjustments. But you should still have goals in mind for where you're going. And that kind of ties in the last part. Keep your world consistent. If you're telling, especially a science fiction, if you're telling a fantasy story, sci-fi thing, and you create this amazing world, try to keep your world consistent. You will lose your audience if you create this artificial environment. Because right now we're sitting in a hotel room in Jefferson City, Missouri. Yes. But we've created our own alternate reality this weekend with Cosplacon. And the one thing you don't want is something to jar you out of that. While you're sitting here listening to me telling stories, your phone goes off and it's your mom saying, the house just blew up. That's going to pull you out of this fantasy and into a horrid nightmare that, or worse, your crazy uncle is here. No, blow up the house now while he's in it. Wait, that's my fantasy. It's not my crazy uncle, it's hers. She'd blow the house up just to get rid of him. Pest control, it works perfectly. Keep your world consistent. Does anybody remember the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie? Okay, first movie, one of the best, most entertaining stories ever told. That scene where they're walking underwater,
that was
and the sun's
so
filtering
cool.
through, and oh my God! I was 10 years old again, going, this is awesome! I'm never going into water again, ever. First Jaws, now this. But it was an amazing movie, and the three characters, putting himself in harm's way to protect Jack Sparrow, and Keira Knightley's character did the same thing all through the first movie and the second one. Do you remember how the second one ended? It was in need of a sequel. So for no reason at all, she killed him. And you can say, no, he didn't really die. He went straight to hell. Isn't that the definition of death? Yeah. I mean, it's either marriage or hell. Or, sometimes it's... Hi, sweetie. But for no reason, she throws him to the Kraken. And it violates everything that they've spent 5 hours of our lives developing and building, simply because, we need a sequel. And it pulled people out of that. The movie made $700 million, but the result of the end of the second movie was so bad for future that Disney almost had to close the Pirates of the Caribbean rides at Disneyland in California and Disney World, and the theme parks that were being constructed because of how well the first movie went got put on hold. No lie, because parents and children couldn't identify with that ending, and it pulled them out of that. And if you're going to tell a successful story, your world needs to be consistent so people are happy with the climax. The ending of your... That's another point. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, and now I'm turning it over to the smarter people.